The war in Ukraine. How do people around the globe see it? And what do they know of the current situation in Donbas? Ukrainian journalist Oleksiy Bobronikov investigates the attitudes of Londoners about the war in his country. The United Kingdom, one of the guarantors of Ukraine's territorial integrity, according to the Budapest Memorandum. The capital of this country is a notorious hideaway of Russian spies and those who hide from them. So what do the British think about the war in eastern Ukraine?
I think that when the conflict started, people were most people were rather surprised to find that the Crimea was in Ukraine and not in Russia.
That was surprised you?
I think so, yes. Most of us, having a very vague idea of the geography, were taken aback and were convinced Britain doesn't have much of a, as we say, we haven't really got a dog in this race. We're not deeply involved in Ukraine or in that part of Russia. Of course, Russia is such an important country that our relations with Russia, everyone knows that they are important. But Ukraine, it's a new problem to us. We didn't understand it.
You have a problem of ethnicity which has caused division, and it's a pity it's reached that stage.
Putin is a funny guy, Crimea is it really Ukraine, and you need our help. Key messages heard on the streets of the British capital. But there's also an odd rhetoric of an ethnic conflict. Where does it stem from? Let's find out. King's College, one of the oldest universities in the UK. The mission here is to tell the story of the war the journalists saw with their own eyes.
A twin brother of the Hitler regime was walking freely and acting at his own will. Putin's Russia managed to transform its mass media into a deadly weapon more functional and effective on its loyalists than all of the Europe's pro-Western media taken together. Russia managed to create a tool motivating residents of the ex-Soviet republics and other countries to wage war against NATO without fighting the single NATO member state. It fights Ukrainian soldiers instead, telling each other the tales of Polish tanks or American or British Marine fighting with them on the Ukrainian soil.
The audience listens carefully. Then there is a question about the nationalists and the Nazis among the volunteer battalions.
Into his National Guard.
But I'm a Jew, and they know that.
I think free speech.
And this has never caused me any issues, so
Yeah,
I would just say that. They're not neo-Nazis if they drive a Jew around Mariupol. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that?
An answer comes from the crowd. It seems the question was answered by the audience themselves. After the discussion at King's College, Oleksiy meets with Ewan Grant, a participant of the previously mentioned seminar on the war in Ukraine. Grant is not just a journalist, he is also a former analyst at the UK Customs.
I would be particularly worried about the academic world. I have been disturbed at the level of sympathy, I wouldn't want to say support, but sympathy for President Putin and the Russian position from academia. I have heard about this at Oxford itself. I have certainly seen it and heard it with my own eyes and ears at Cambridge.
That same evening, Oleksiy went to see an old friend, a Chechen politician, Ahmed Zakayev, exiled from Russia and an enemy of Putin's regime.
It's hard for Russian lobbyists in London these days. Litvinenko case, to mention the fact that the Russian president was involved in another killing, I'm just going to say I feel bad for them. Putin, if he isn't shot in the Kremlin or thrown in jail, will be eventually judged for all his crimes, including Chechnya. I think there will come a day. His time will come.
The Brits don't know everything about Ukraine, but they're ready to listen. That means the country's government needs to speak up and not be afraid to correct those who don't speak of Ukraine properly.